I will never forget the day they came. It was a morning like any other in my village in the Gold Coast, what people now call Ghana. The sun had barely risen and the air smelled of wet earth from last night's rain. Mothers were lighting fires to cook and children were laughing as they played near the river. But then the peace shattered. They came with their strange clothes and their even stranger weapons. White men with face pale like the moon marched in with soldiers. Some of them were our people, forced to fight for them. They spoke in a language none of us understood, pointing their guns at our fathers and uncles. My mother grabbed my hand so tightly that her nails dug into my skin. "Do not speak, do not move," she whispered. At first, they pretended to be our friends. They gave us mirrors and colorful clothes, and they spoke of trade. But soon the truth came. They wanted more than trade, they wanted control. They forced our chief to sign papers they could not read, giving away land that was never theirs to take. When some of our warriors resisted, they brought war to our village. Fires consumed our homes. Those who fought back were either killed or taken away in chains. Years passed, and the land no longer felt like ours. The British made rules we never agreed to. They forced us to grow cocoa, gold, and timber, not for us, but for their wealth. The land that once fed us now only fed their threats. Our fathers became workers in their own land, taxed for the right to live on soil that had belonged to our ancestors for centuries. They took our brothers and sent them to fight in their wars we knew nothing about. Some never returned. They took our stories, our names, and even our gods, telling us that our ways were foolish and that we had to become like them to be civilized. But what kind of civilization steals from the hand that feed it? By the time I was a young man, we no longer spoke freely. To question their rule was to invite punishment, whipping, prisons, or wars. But whispers of freedom spread like fire in the dark. People like Kwame Nkrumah began to speak out. Enough, they said. Africa must be free. I saw it with my own eyes. The protests, the strike, the speeches that made the heart beat faster. I saw men and women stand together, no longer afraid. And in 1957, when Ghana finally broke free, I wept. But freedom was not the end of our troubles. The chains they left behind were not made of iron, but they were still heavy. They divided us, they took our works, and they made sure we would struggle to stand on our own. Even now, I wonder what would Africa have been without them. But this is our land, our story, and we still write the next chapter ourselves. Even after Ghana gained independence, the scales of colonialism did not fade. The British had left, but they had taken everything with them: our resources, our unity, and even the way we saw ourselves. The system they built were never meant to serve us. They were meant to control us. And even when we took control, we were left with the broken piece of a system we never deserved. I remember the first few years after independence. There was so much hope. People danced in the street, waving the new Ghana flag, proud to be free. But what is freedom when your economy is still in the hands of those who once ruled you? The company that controlled our cocoa, gold, and timber were still foreign. The schools still taught our children more about Britain than about Africa. The banks, the railways, even the government buildings, all of them had been built to serve them, not us. And then came the struggles. The leaders who had fought so hard for freedom had to face the new NLA, poverty, corruption, and the weight of debt we never asked for. The same Europeans who once ruled us now offered help. Loans with impossible conditions, deals that took more than they gave. We were free, but still trapped. I saw it happen not just in Ghana, but across Africa, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in the Congo. Colonial borders drawn carelessly by men in London and Paris forced enemies to live as one, and they separated families by invisible lines. Wars broke out, civil wars, tribal wars, all because of the division they created. The French, the British, the Portuguese, they had left, but they still control us from far away. They install leaders who will serve them, not their own people. And when those leaders refused to obey, they were removed, sometimes through assassination, sometimes through cops, always with foreign hand pulling the strings. I watched as young nation, full of promises, fell into cycle of instability. I saw the rise of dictators, some of whom were trained and supported by the same power that had once colonized us. I saw our resources continue to flow out of Africa just as they had during colonial times, while our people struggled to eat. But I saw resistance. I saw young Africans waking up, learning the truth about our past and demanding better. I saw Pan-Africanists calling for unity, for economic independence, for Africans to rise on its own terms. I saw the strength of the people who had been broken but never destroyed. And so, I sit here now, an old man, watching my grandchildren play in a free Ghana. I wonder, will they finally see the Africa we were meant to have? An Africa not shaped by outsiders, but by its own people. I do not know, but I have hope, because if there is one thing Africa has always had, it is the power to rise again. Years passed, but the struggle did not end. Colonialism was no longer the enemy we could see with guns and wives. It had changed its form. It no longer came with soldiers, but with contracts, not with chains, but with debts. I saw it with my own eyes. The same land that had been stolen from our ancestors were now controlled by foreign companies. Our gold, our oil, our diamond, taken at a price they decided. They said Africa was free, yet when we tried to stand on our own, they made sure we could not. They controlled the market, set the price, and kept us dependent. I remember when our leaders tried to fight back in Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah dreamed of a strong Africa, one that controlled its own wealth. He built schools, factories, and roads, trying to free us from the grip of the West, but they would not let him succeed. He was overthrown, and in his place came new leaders, some chosen by us, some forced upon us. Some were puppets, others were strong, but all had to face the same reality. We were free in name, but not in power. It was not just Ghana. I watched as the Congo bled, its riches stolen, while its people suffered. Patrice Lumumba, a man who dared to demand true freedom, was killed. In Nigeria, the discovering of oil did not bring wealth to the people, but to the foreign companies and corrupt officials. In Kenya, the Mau Mau had fought for their land, but even after independence, much of it remained in the hands of the settlers. And then came the loan, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. They came with smiles and promise of development. They offered money to build roads, hospitals, and schools, but they never gave without taking. The interest rates were high, the conditions unfair. Privatize your industries, they say. Sell your resources, they insisted. Before we knew it, we owned more than we could ever repay. Our economies were no longer ours. I saw young men and women leave their homes, crossing the deserts and the sea, chasing the same wealth that was taken from us. I saw others stay behind, frustrated, angry, watching as their leaders grew rich while the poor remained poor. Some picked up guns, joining rebellions and terrorist groups, believing violence was the only way to be heard. Others fought with word, with protest, with dreams of a better Africa. And yet, I still have hope because I have also seen the rise of a new generation, a generation that is questioning, that is demanding, that is building. They are using technology, education, and unity to break the invisible chains. They are learning our true history, rejecting the lies we were told. They are creating business, pushing for their trade, and calling for leaders who serve the people, not the foreign interest. As I sit in my old wooden chair, watching the sun set over my village, I whisper a prayer that one day Africa will finally be free, not just from colonial rule, but from everything it left behind. And when the day comes, the world will see the Africa that was always meant to be. Thanks for watching. This is the end of the story. I believe you're enjoying the history. Stay tuned for more history and cultures of Africa. We must learn and understand the background of our continent, Africa. Please do well to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out of all interesting histories and culture of Africa.